The news headlines this morning were truly incredible. Trump wants to take over Gaza. Mind you, and I say this at the very outset, this could mean, and not only theoretical, this could really mean US troops fighting Hamas in Gaza. And if you are watching mainstream news right now, they have you to believe that the US announcing its plan to take over Gaza was some kind of shocking, unexpected development. But for anyone who is paying attention, and especially for those of you who are watching this very channel, this is no surprise. It is clear that this is a premeditated, carefully orchestrated plan years in the making. Let's go back to October 28, 2023, when the Israeli magazine Mekomit leaked a document originating from Israel's Ministry of Intelligence. And what did it reveal? A detailed plan for the forced transfer of Gaza's 2.3 million residents. This document, dated October 13, 2023, that's only 6 days after October 7, stated it clearly. It called for an ethnic cleansing operation, but disguised under a banner of humanitarian mission. And coincidentally, that's exactly the way Trump was framing it today. The strategy? First bomb Gaza into the ground until living conditions become hell. Then present mass displacement as the only viable humanitarian option. And finally, pressure other countries like Jordan and Egypt to go along with it. Now fast forward to the present. Trump stands next to Netanyahu announcing that the US will take over Gaza. He paints a rosy picture when he talks about turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. But let's be very clear. This isn't about rebuilding Gaza for the Palestinians. This most and foremost is about personal profit for the Trump oligarchy with his son-in-law Jared Kushner at the helm. And it's about occupation, land grabs and geopolitics disguised as development and humanitarian aid. So how exactly do they sell ethnic cleansing to the world? Let's break this down. The leaked document from 2023 already made it clear. Israel wanted Gaza empty. The excuse? It's for their own good. That's virtually written in the document. The link's in the description. In that document, the Israeli government framed the forced mass removal of all Palestinians from Gaza as a humanitarian evacuation. Note, this type of framing is PR language and is meant for public consumption. But how do you make an entire population desperate enough to flee? Easy enough. You destroy everything. Hospitals, homes, water supplies, schools. You simply leave them with no other option. And what exactly did happen? Exactly. Unprecedented and systematic bombardments putting Gaza virtually back into the Stone Age. The Israeli military launched some of the most intense airstrikes in modern history on Gaza, systematically wiping out everything. Every school, every hospital, every market reduced to rubble, house by house, cutting off basic necessities, water, electricity, medical aid, all blocked. Gaza is unlivable. In comes propaganda and PR spin, my specialty. The Israeli and US governments are selling you the narrative that relocating people is or would be humanitarian. And the mainstream media, as always, is playing along, reporting it as a necessary move to protect civilians. This is so obvious and so blatant. It screams for further investigation. It's the same strategy we have seen before. Bomb, starve and displace. And then call it help. It's a 75-year-long pattern of displacement. The Nakba never ended, at least not for the Palestinians. This isn't new. The forced displacement of Palestinians has been a systematic process since 1948. The Nakba, or the catastrophe, saw 750,000 Palestinians expelled from their homes to make way for the creation of Israel. Virtually entire villages were wiped off the map. I interviewed two survivors of the Tantura massacre in 1948, so I can tell you that the expulsion was not the worst that happened. Massacres and mass graves, dug by the very victims, were a massive part of it. Then came 1967, the Six-Day War. More Palestinians were pushed out, more land was annexed. Right now the playbook is exactly the same. Destroy, displace, deny. The only difference? They are much more sophisticated at selling you and to the world their narrative. And Trump? He's just the latest American president to be complicit. Complicit and/or bought. Let's not forget that Trump received virtually hundreds of millions of dollars from individuals, from Israeli individuals like Miriam Adelson. In fact, Israel bought Gaza by buying a US president. And his Riviera of the Middle East nonsense is nothing more than colonial fantasy where Palestinian suffering is erased and the land is turned into a massive, wealth-generating real estate project. Wealth-generating not for the Palestinians, of course. Let's talk about the legal side of this disaster. Forced relocation is a war crime. There's no ambiguity about it. The Geneva Convention, Article 49, explicitly forbids the forced transfer of occupied populations. What Israel and the US are doing meets the definition of ethnic cleansing. Acquiring territory by force is illegal. Under the UN Charter, seizing land by force is a violation of international law. No wonder both gentlemen, Netanyahu and Trump, do everything they can to undermine, weaken and if possible destroy these kind of international institutions. The International Court of Justice has ruled that Gaza is occupied. This means that Israel and now the US have a legal responsibility towards the population. So when Trump talks about taking over Gaza and relocating its population, he's talking about war crimes and ethnic cleansing. In a sane world, both Netanyahu and Trump, not to mention Biden and co., would have to face justice in The Hague. But in our reality, who is going to stop them? The UN has condemned Israel's actions for decades, yet nothing has happened. The US shields Israel from any consequences, vetoing all attempts to hold it accountable. This plan isn't just bad for the Palestinians, it's a ticking time bomb for the entire Middle East. Sooner or later, this time bomb is going to blow. It is going to blow because other countries get involved. Once that happens, an uncontrollable chain reaction could be triggered. Egypt has already rejected the idea of absorbing Palestinians from Gaza. They fear destabilization, economic collapse and security threats. But in essence, what they fear most is that the Palestinians might close ranks with the Muslim Brotherhood, which General Sisi tries already to suppress as hard as he can. That's why Egyptian officials have warned that a mass influx of Palestinians could create permanent refugee camps, much like the Palestinian crisis in Lebanon, which is a far cry from the beautiful places that Trump was talking about yesterday. We all know that the squalid conditions in refugee camps are a perfect conditions for disenfranchised young men becoming radicalized. And Jordan? Well, this country already hosts millions of Palestinian refugees. The Jordanian monarchy sees any forced relocation not only as a direct threat to national stability, but as a threat to its very own survival. Jordan's former foreign minister, Dr. Marwan Mouasher, has expressed his concern about this very situation when I interviewed him just a couple of months ago. That's why King Abdullah II has flat out rejected any discussion of taking in even more displaced Palestinians. He now even has threatened war with Israel in case Trump should push this through. This should give you an indication just how serious the Hashemite regime with King Abdullah II at its top takes this whole situation. And it's quite interesting to observe how Saudi Arabia publicly denounces America's audacious plan to take over Gaza, yet behind closed doors they're cozying up with a colossal $600 billion investment deal with the very same US. This massive financial commitment announced by Crown Prince MBS during a call with President Trump is supposedly aimed at strengthening economic ties across key sectors like defense and technology. But let's be real, such deepening alliance doesn't bolster economics. It inevitably influences political maneuvers. While Saudi officials loudly reject any forced relocation of Palestinians, one can't help to wonder. With this level of financial entanglement, are they truly standing firm with Palestine, or is their commitment to the Palestinian sovereignty mere lip service? Well, I leave you to be the judge of this. It's really hard to ignore the glaring contradictions between their public proclamations and their private dealings. Meanwhile, we see strong condemnations coming from the Global South. If you live in the West, and especially if you depend on Western media, you probably believe that the whole world is with Israel and the US. In reality, countries like South Africa, Malaysia, Brazil and Turkey have already publicly denounced Israel and the US for their actions. Latin America has been particularly vocal. Colombia and Chile have even cut ties with Israel. Yet, despite global outrage, the US and its Western allies continue to enable Israel. Let's not forget, Trump is a businessman first and a politician second. He sees Gaza not as a humanitarian crisis, but as a massive real estate opportunity. The Riviera of the Middle East fantasy is about turning Gaza into a profit-making mega machine, erasing Palestinian identity in the process. Trump allies, Israeli investors and Gulf businessmen are probably already making land development plans together with Kushner, who not so long ago spoke about the high value of beachfront property in Gaza. This isn't rebuilding, it's looting. So where does this leave us? The world is watching as another Palestinian catastrophe unfolds. The forced displacement of Gaza's people is being framed as humanitarianism, but in reality it's one of the most blatant ethnic cleansing operations of our time. And yet, who will stop it? The UN powerless, the Arab world complicit, the West silent. So it's up to us to expose, to resist and to refuse to let history repeat itself. A word of caution, history shows that men do not learn from history. More on this topic will follow, so stay tuned. One last thing, critical voices like the ones you hear on this channel are being actively silenced and suppressed. You may not notice it, you may not know it, you may not even believe it, but it does happen, and I have the statistics to prove it. So if you do value sharp, unfiltered analysis that doesn't follow the mainstream narrative, hit subscribe, like and share. It really makes a difference. And for those who want to keep up with my work, make sure to join me on Substack. No restricting algorithmic filters there, or listen to my podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Amazon. The links are in the description below. Thank you.